Lewis and Clark, the Yukon, and Volkswagen are all on this day. Welcome back to On This Day. Today's date is June 13th, 2025. It is the 164th day of the year. You got 201 days left in 2025. It is the 24th Friday in the 24th week and the 82nd day of spring. 7 days left until summer. Today is St. Anthony's Day. Never knew much about him, but I did some reading. He was a man from a wealthy Portugal family that joined the priesthood back in the 1100s. He was known for having a photographic memory when it came to scripture. That's what they said. He remembered everything. He was very devoted to the sick and the poor, and was one of the fastest canonized saints we'd ever had. He carries the title of Doctor of the Church, I guess because all the work he did with the sick. All right, let's see what else June 13th has given us. 1625, Charles I marries Henrietta Maria. Love, politics, and awkward family dinners. King Charles I of England tied the knot with French Catholic Princess Henrietta Maria, which sounds romantic until you realize the religious tension it stirred up back at home. Marrying a Catholic in Protestant England was basically the 17th century version of announcing that you're switching teams during the playoffs. Spoiler alert. This marriage did not help Charles' popularity, and things would finally spiral into a full-blown civil war. But hey, at least the wedding was probably classy, right? 1774, Rhode Island becomes the first colony to ban slave importation, a bold first step. Way before the rest of America caught on, little old Rhode Island said nope to the slave trade. On June 13th, 1774, the state banned the importation of slaves. At the time, it was only a colony, becoming the first British colony in North America to do so. Sure, slavery still stuck around for a while longer, even in Rhode Island, but this move planted a serious seed for future abolition. Leave it to the smallest state to make one of the biggest early statements. 1805, Lewis and Clark spot the Great Falls of Missouri and thought to themselves, well, that looks exhausting. Meriwether Lewis, out ahead of the main expedition crew, got a glimpse of the Great Falls of the Missouri River and probably realized he was in for a whole lot of lifting stuff. The Great in Great Falls wasn't just a name. These were big, roaring obstacles that meant hauling boats and gear for miles over rugged terrain. But it was also a majestic reminder they were headed into truly uncharted territory. If you go see those Great Falls today, don't expect to see them like they were when Lewis and Clark saw them. They got a big dam there now. 1898, on June 13th, the Canadian government officially formed the Yukon Territory because things had gotten way out of control and they needed to get a grip on it. The Klondike Gold Rush was in full swing, and Dawson City had exploded from a sleepy outpost to a chaotic, mud-soaked metropolis almost overnight. Thousands of prospectors, gamblers, con artists, and desperate dreamers had flooded into the region, all hoping to strike it rich in the frozen north. And when we say flooded, we mean it. Dawson was built on permafrost, and it was prone to flooding, which made streets more like rivers of slush and misery. The government, sensing that letting a bunch of gold-crazed fortune seekers run a place might be a bad idea, and it was. They decided to bring some structure, hence the Yukon Territory. Before that, the area was part of the Northwest Territory, a place so vast and loosely governed that it might as well have been on the moon. Creating the Yukon Territory gave Canada the official excuse to show up with Mounties, build jails, and try and keep things from descending into a lawless Arctic free-for-all. Dawson was chosen as the capital because, frankly, it was the only town in the region that had more than one building and a population that hadn't fled screaming into the woods yet. At its peak, Dawson's population hit around 40,000, nearly all of whom were either chasing gold or selling things to the people chasing gold. Saloons, brothels, makeshift hotels, and supply stores popped up like mushrooms after a rainstorm. Only these mushrooms charged about $10 for a shovel and would probably give you dysentery. Of course, the boom didn't last. By the early 1900s, the gold started drying up, and so did Dawson's population. Many of the stampeders who hadn't frozen, gone broke, or ended up in jail simply moved on to the next glittery hope. Dawson shrank into a glorified ghost town, but its legend remained. Today, it's a place where tourists can sip sourdough cocktails. Yes, it's a thing. Pan for gold, and try and imagine what it was like to be part of one of history's most feverish, muddiest, and frost-bitten gold rushes. So yes, the Yukon Territory was born out of greed, chaos, and the need to install some plumbing and actual laws. It's one of the most ruggedly unique slices of Canada, just with better roads, fewer gold-crazed maniacs, mostly. Yeah, so back in the day, they had like 40,000 residents living there, or not living there full-time, but they were there. Now it has about 1,500. 1927, Charles Lindbergh gets his ticker tape parade. He was the original American flyboy. After flying solo across the Atlantic Ocean, Charles Lindbergh was greeted by what every introvert dreads, millions of people cheering him through the streets of New York City. On June 13, 1927, Fifth Avenue rained ticker tape like it was New Year's Eve, and Wall Street had just discovered confetti. Lindbergh became a national hero, all for surviving 33 hours alone in a tiny plane with no autopilot and even less legroom. Can you say blood clot? 1966, Miranda vs. Arizona. You have the right to remain informed. The Supreme Court's decision changed American crime dramas forever. On this day, the court ruled that suspects must be informed of their rights before interrogation, thus inventing the Miranda warning. Now every cop show starts off with, "You have the right to remain silent," because some guy named Ernesto Miranda got arrested without knowing he didn't have to spill the beans. Thanks to him, due process got a serious upgrade. 1967, Thurgood Marshall is nominated to the Supreme Court. Yes, history-making Lyndon B. Johnson decided to make some history and nominate Thurgood Marshall to the Supreme Court. Marshall would become the first black justice on the nation's highest bench, a major step forward during a decade that was still dragging its feet on civil rights. From arguing Brown versus Board of Education to breaking barriers in the courtroom, this nomination was long overdue, but monumental nonetheless. 1983, Pioneer 10 says, "See you later, solar system." On June 13th, 1983, Pioneer 10 officially became the first human-made object to leave the central solar system. It was the space equivalent of throwing a message in a bottle and hoping aliens would read it. Launched in 1972, Pioneer 10 zipped past Jupiter and kept going. That one fascinates me, how far away it is right now. 2018, Volkswagen fined €1 billion. Remember when Volkswagen advertised clean diesel and then secretly installed cheat devices to fake out emission tests? Well, the German government remembered it too and hit them with a €1 billion fine on June 13th. It was one of the biggest penalties ever handed out in Europe. Let that be a lesson. If you're gonna lie and cheat, maybe don't do it with 11 million cars. Movies released on June 13th, 1986, Back to School. A wealthy businessman and fun-loving father heads back to college to encourage his disillusioned son who wants to drop out. This is the one with Rodney Dangerfield. Robert Downey Jr. was in it, Burt Young was in it, Sam Kinison was in it, and a lot of people seem to think this was a great movie. I watched it. I think I've watched it twice. It was a mediocre comedy at best, but a lot of people for some frickin' reason think this movie was amazing. Just didn't do it for me. It was the 24th highest grossing movie of 1986. It was up against Top Gun, Stand By Me, Little Shop of Horrors, David Bowie's Labyrinth, Pretty in Pink, Aliens, Legend, Platoon, Three Amigos, Big Trouble in Little China, Lucas, Flight of the Navigator, Mosquito Coast, The Color of Money. There were so many good movies out that year. How they made it to number 24 is beyond me. Sid and Nancy even came out that year. That one's always baffled me. Died on June 13th, 2021, Ned Beatty passes away. A scene-stealing legend. Character actor Ned Beatty died on this day, leaving behind decades of unforgettable film roles, from Deliverance to Network to his voice in Toy Story 3. Of course, we all saw Deliverance. We know what happened to poor old Ned Beatty out there in the Kentucky backwoods or Tennessee backwoods, whatever it was. I guess them hillbillies get kind of lonely out there in the woods. He was no relation to Warren Beatty, but used to tell people he was his illegitimate uncle. They were both born the same year. Ned Beatty died in Los Angeles on June 13th, 2021 at the age of 83. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, be nice to each other.